Do you want to hear my review of Alan Wake 2?
And it's, I mean, the song ranked in some of your top media. How's the game rank?
For those that didn't see that, I saw the song on YouTube and it got me interested in the game. I wasn't really familiar with the Alan Wake series, so I kind of like just watched a video about what the story was in the first game because I wanted to play this game to see what that song was all about. So yeah, I played it. I liked it a lot. It would be my game of the year, I think, of 2023, but I don't play many games, so
Is it a big long game? I mean, how many hours do you think you spent with it?
probably 18 hours, 18-hour game. So it's not like the longest thing in the world. It's doable. Yeah, so it's lots of influences to this game. It's definitely heavy on Twin Peaks. Especially for this game, Twin Peaks: The Return, which is when a few years ago David Lynch came back and made a third season of Twin Peaks. There's a lot of influence, even just like because like David Lynch came back and he was just as excessive as he could with it, and there's a little bit of that in here, which you kind of.
So, I'm sorry. What's the link between Twin Peaks and David Lynch and this game? Are they related in some way?
With Twin Peaks influence, it's like it takes place in like a Washington town. It's got quirky characters, has very similar iconography, things like that. So it's humor and there's like a dark force in the in the woods or in the lake. So there's a lot of similarities there. And in fact, it has like some David Lynch dreamy imagery, like ripped right from Twin Peaks: The Return. Like some of the transitions are, I don't know, like how like David Lynch has like these little weird like explosions and sparks and weird transitions. He does they do some of that in this game. It's like, and also some more influences like True Detective season 1. So there's lots of deer and antler iconography, and it's used for a spooky effect. And also it's a very investigation focus like True Detective season 1. So it feels very much in that same vein because you, especially the beginning of the game, you work with a partner, and it feels a lot like True Detective. And obviously, it's kind of Silent Hill related, The Shining. There's lots of inspiration, so and they all work here. I think they work well with what they came up with here. So the game has like two characters. So you have a new character named Saga Anderson, and she's like this game's new girl boss that they created for this one. And then you have Alan Wake, which he, from the first game, he gets trapped in this place known as the Dark Place. And so he's kind of trapped there. You play as Saga Anderson in the real world, and she's kind of trying to, Alan's trying to escape the Dark Place. She's trying to find Alan. It's kind of like they meet in that sort of way. So there's a few modes when in this game you're with Saga Anderson, you're looking for like clues in the case, and you gather clues. It's really interesting because you gather clues and you put it on like a board, like in Beautiful Mind or that Charlie Day meme, with the string and the pictures. And so you get clues, and she has like a mind place that she goes to where she puts these things on a board. It's very therapeutic for me to like, ooh, here's a clue, and then you put it up on your board and you see how everything connects. It's kind of interesting. I've never seen that before. And as you explore, you encounter people who are kind of possessed by this dark presence. So you have wolves that are possessed by this dark presence. So there's not a huge variety of enemies. It's usually just like a few different versions of Guy and Wolf, but there's not that much combat, so it doesn't really matter. I really like the more like puzzle solving and exploring and the looking for clues aspects of this. So you can actually concurrently switch between these scenarios. So you switch between Alan Wake, who's trying to escape the Dark Place, and where he is more of like a dreamlike prison. It has dreamlike logic too. So you're walking around and it feels like a dream where like things connect strangely to each other. When you like open a door, it can sometimes go to a surprising place. And him being a writer, it's interesting because he where Saga's story, she's investigating, she goes into her mind place. He can go into like his own space, and he can change the environment by writing a story, because he goes into a room with a typewriter. He can like change how the Dark Place is laid out by how the plot is. Like for example, you'll come up to a subway tunnel, and the subway tunnel is like blocked. So you can go into his writing room, and you can change the plot. Suddenly the surroundings change. Maybe there'll be blood on the floor now because the plot changed. And then like the tunnel will be cleared, so then you can progress through his nightmare prison. It's pretty interesting. The graphics are beautiful. I remember when Max Payne came out, I remember that really pushed the envelope back in the day. Whenever that came out, it was like 2000. Was that early 2000s? It's really no different here. They had like the forests are lush with vegetation. You have beautiful sunsets. And then in Alan's story, he's stuck in that like grimy, disgusting dream New York City, which is similar to real New York City.
It's disgusting.
One thing is the combat I think is really clunky, but it's kind of like a survival horror trope that you have clunky combat. So maybe it's a feature, but you eventually get used to it. And you power up, and during the course of your adventure, you find power ups with both Alan and Saga Anderson. I don't feel like I ever got a mastery of that. I think it's because in the beginning the enemies are pretty sparse because you're really concentrating on the investigation, and occasionally there will be enemies, and you like clumsily dispatch them. And then they'll throw a boss at you, and that becomes a roadblock because you're so poorly acclimated to the combat controls. And so you have to really get on your game for the boss. And then eventually there's more and more enemies. You get better, but I still never felt like I mastered the controls with the combat. And you have to manage flashlight charges because the flashlight stuns your enemies. It removes darkness from them. And when you do that, you can shoot them with your gun. So you're managing batteries, you're managing ammo, flares. But it's pretty well balanced for a survival horror. So it feels like you're always on the verge of being out of ammo or out of flashlight charge, but you can usually find supplies soon after. So it's not like some survival horror game where it feels like you're, especially the early ones in PlayStation, where you'd run out of ammo and you have to run past enemies for ever until you get more ammo. It's modernized pretty well. And then the biggest draw, of course, is the musical sections, which I expressed my appreciation of.
So you were drawn to stories early on. My dreams would light up my imagination. And you had nightmares night and day. Yeah, but with the clicker, I chased those frights away. Who knew? So true.
And they are the high point. The Old Gods of Asgard, which is Poets of the Fall. That's their fake band inside the story. And their tunes play a big part in Alan Wake's dream sequence, which is the Herald of Darkness scene, which is very theatrical. And then the finale of Saga Anderson's story has another musical section, which is just as amazing. It's in fact, now I'm onto that song that I'm playing on repeat.
Hey, you're making me look bad in front of Saga, bro.
They know how to make a catchy tune. The songs kind of just show you how much creativity is in it. And there's even a part where you'll go into a movie theater and you have to, in Alan's story, you unlock a film where you can just sit down and watch this 15-minute short film if you want in the movie theater. So just a ton of creativity there.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a really robust piece of art. A lot happening.
We've been on discussions on Discord, how much story is interesting in a video game and how well it can tell that story. And I do think the story here it is interesting, but it's probably too convoluted and up its own ass for me ultimately to enjoy. And it kind of ends like Twin Peaks ends. Even the original show ended kind of cryptically and weird. And then when David Lynch did The Return, it ended even more cryptic and even more weird and even more dreamy. And there's elements of that here where it doesn't really end super satisfactory. But what the story does, and this is what I think in games in general, what the story does provide is a creepy mood, a good experience. There's these sections where Saga enters an overlap between the real world and that dark place dream world, and things get really surreal and disturbing. And those are some of the best area, my favorite areas, because they're so disturbing. And I was a huge fan of the Silent Hill games for that reason. Yeah, and it just that's why I think environmental horror in the uneasiness. I think this game does that well. So even though the story is complex and, you know, I don't know if it did that much for me.
An auto-fictional thought experiment, a horror story, a postmodern detective story.
Wait.
I think about it a lot, even because just the mood it put me in.
I was just gonna say that's one thing a video game should be able to do successfully is create atmosphere and mood, right?
And that's what I think. I tend to, people like games for story too. And you've talked about how you think it's an inefficient medium for story. And I tend to agree with that, but I'm more in for it for the mood of it, like walking through a haunted house or maybe a Disney World ride, how it kind of makes you feel like you're in a different place and, the emotions that go with that. And one thing it does is it uses a lot of real actors in certain scenes, which reminds me of old PC games like
Myst,
with Jedi Knight and stuff and Myst. Right. And so especially it's mostly in like the dreamlike sections.
You're talking about like straight up live action, like not mocap?
Live actor, like, because they modeled the characters in the game after actors, and then they bring those actors in to like play out situations, and it just like adds more kind of like uncanny. It's weird because they're real people, but it's uncanny valley because it's in the game. I don't know. They're doing something interesting with the narrative there. To add on to that dreamlike element, there's Finnish actors who are the models. So like that happened in the original Max Payne. You had a Sam Lake, this Finnish guy, and then when he talks, it's an American voice actor. And so they do that here, where they have a real Finnish actor, and then he's talking, and he's like being dubbed over by his American voice actor.
I don't know. I guess I just wish I could have been more involved in making them.
So it gives this like weird more of a dreamlike feel to it. So I dig it. It's weird. I love it. It's creative. It's weird. It's horrifying, and it takes heavy swings. But for the most part, I think it pays off in the end.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.